Ambassador, thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you very much.
So you've recently assumed this role. How have you found working in Burma?
I found it a huge pleasure. And one of the greatest things about it has been meeting all of the people here. I've had the chance to go out into the rural areas to see how people really live in this country. And while there's a lot of hardship, what I always find is a great spirit of optimism about the future, and that's very energizing.
Can we expect to see any policy changes?
Well, as the reform process proceeds in this country, as I very much hope it will, a lot of things become possible, and Britain's engagement here can grow and grow.
Britain recently commenced a military training programme in Burma. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, it's called Managing Defence in the Wider World, and it's about how an army behaves in the modern world. So it's about human rights, it's about accountability, it's about the international legal frameworks, it's about things like child soldiers. And we were able to spend 2 weeks talking to a select group of both members of the Burmese military and also Burmese civil servants about what a modern army looks like. So it was very much about that. It wasn't about helping the army to fight more capably. It was about human rights and responsibility.
With regards to military training, Minister Hugo Swire on the 12th of January wrote in defence of British military training in Burma that Britain had consulted people across Burmese society and a range of ethnic groups and Aung San Suu Kyi. Could you elaborate on who and what was consulted and if any agreements were made?
Well, we haven't had a formal agreement. We've been talking to all of the sort of prominent political figures in this country, including leaders from the ethnic groups. And I think they all realise, as we do, that, like it or not, the army is a central part of Burmese society. It's going to play a very key role on the peace process. It's going to play a very key role on the democratisation process. And they and we take the view that it's better to engage with the army, it's better to talk to them, try and change their views, than it is to isolate them. So that's why we've been doing what we've been doing.
And will any members of the ethnic armed groups be involved in this training?
Well, there obviously we've been focusing the training on the members of the Burmese military. We're working separately on a different set of issues with the ethnic armed groups and talking to them about things like security sector reform and the support for their engagement in the peace process.
The UK seems to be placing a lot of faith in Aung San Suu Kyi's bid for presidency. Would it be fair to say that Britain supports her?
No, I don't think it would be fair to say that. I think it would be fair to say that Britain supports a democratic process here, and we support the idea that any Burmese person with sufficient popularity ought to be able to occupy the highest office in the land. And that's what being a modern country, a modern democratic country is all about, that people should have a free choice of who they want to lead them. So we're not engaging with supporting individuals, we're talking about supporting the process.
With regard to Suu Kyi's request for British support for constitutional reform, again, Minister Hugo Swire says that historical links and British armed forces, Britain has an important role to play. How do you see that role?
I think we do have an important role to play. I mean, obviously we have great historical links with this country. We've played a particular role over the last 20 or 30 years, probably being the leading country campaigning for change in Burma. So I think it is incumbent upon us to be amongst the leading countries campaigning for change on the Constitution. And we're campaigning, by the way, for change in 2 areas, one of which is to ensure that the Burmese people can elect whoever they want to be their president. And the other one, of course, is a very important set of changes to do with the peace process. The peace process is another big priority for us.
The UK and the EU made reference to a list of commitments that Burma needed to accomplish. The release of all political prisoners, constitutional reform, especially regards to Article 59F, which stipulates that Aung San Suu Kyi couldn't be president because she's married to a foreigner and her children have British citizenship. Is this a deal breaker?
Well, I think the reform of the Constitution is probably the big challenge that the democratic reform process now faces in this country, that the reformist leaders of this country now face. They must pass this challenge in order for that sort of positive momentum to continue. Now, I very much hope they will pass that challenge, and that opens up a huge range of possibilities for future cooperation between this country and the UK.
China has been involved in the peace process between the Kachin Independence Organisation and the government. They played a mediator role. Given Britain's historical relationship with Burma, is there any plans to play a more active role in the peace process?
Well, we see the peace process as one of our real priorities in this country, and we've said for a long time that we're prepared to play any role which both sides would like us to play. And we are following the process very, very closely. We have been talking to the government and talking to the ethnic armed groups, and we've been supporting them. Various British NGOs who have expertise in peace negotiations have been helping to support both sides. So we've been very active, and we'll continue to be very active, and we will play whatever role is asked of us, because we think, as I said with the Constitution earlier, the successful peace process is essential if Burma is to become the modern democratic country that we all want it to become.
The UK has been very outspoken on the situation in Arakan State with regards to the persecution of Rohingya Muslims. Recently there's been another outbreak of violence in Mongdor. What is your view on that?
Well, you may have seen there was a statement from us and from the US Embassy on Friday on that issue. We're very concerned by the reports that are coming in. It's not quite clear exactly what happened there yet. We've called on the government to mount a full investigation so that it's clear what's happened. I think more widely on Rakhine, the first and most important step is to ensure that the security, that these violent incidents no longer happen. And that's a government responsibility. The government has to ensure that security is provided to make sure that those violent incidents can't happen. Another very important issue, and I saw this myself when I was in Rakhine just before Christmas, is humanitarian access. Some of the internally displaced people are living in very difficult conditions, and it's very important that humanitarian aid gets through to them. And I think there's a misunderstanding that somehow we're favouring one community over another. And I just want to assure people in this interview that international aid goes to those who need it. And that's why it's going mostly into the camps where people are unable to work, they're unable to get out and earn money. And the government, again, must ensure that humanitarian access is guaranteed and people can get in and deliver that aid. Finally, of course, there's a bigger question about the future of Rakhine, the future of the communities there, and we are urging the government to take forward the process of citizenship to ensure that those people who are entitled to citizenship get it and their status is clear.
Rohingyas have been here, some of them have been here for generations, some were brought in by the British in colonial times. Are you for citizenship for Rohingyas?
Well, what the Burmese government has said is that they're going to apply the 1982 citizenship law. My understanding is that that says that if you've lived here for a number of generations, you're entitled to citizenship. Now, my view from our research is that a very large number of the Rohingya population will be entitled to citizenship under the provisions of that law. But of course it's for the government to conduct an exercise to see who is entitled and who isn't. But I agree with you, the Muslim population in Rakhine has been there for many, many years, and we've done research which demonstrates that certainly when the British first arrived there back in the early 19th century, there was a significant Muslim population. So we don't accept this story that everybody there is a recent illegal immigrant. That I'm afraid isn't true.
The Rohingya issue can't be ignored, and there's so many people who have an opinion on it. Is there any role that we, Britain, can play to solve this issue?
Well, I think the international community as a whole can support the government and urge the government to tackle issues like security. We can, of course, provide aid to ensure that those who've been displaced are able to survive, and we can work with the government on the issue of the long-term status of people in Rakhine. So I think there is a role for the international community, but ultimately it's the government's responsibility to address the situation there.
As a conduit for British investment, what advice does the British Embassy have for British businessmen looking to invest in Burma?
Well, our first piece of advice is come and have a look. Come and see what the country is really like. There are huge opportunities here, but there are also very many challenges. You have to be quite careful about how you do business here. And that, by the way, is why we've been supporting the Myanmar Centre for Responsible Business, which is helping companies decide how to approach the difficult human rights issues that can exist here. But overall, come and have a look. The economy is going to grow very significantly over the next 10 or 20 years, and there will be a great many opportunities for international companies. And that's good for us, it's good for the British economy, but it's also good for this country, because that investment is going to be needed in order to secure the kind of jobs that are going to be required for ordinary people to feel the effects of economic growth. And international investors bring standards of corporate conduct, they bring skills training, which will be very, very useful for this country.
You mentioned some of the challenges just then, such as human rights abuses. There's been a lot of controversy over certain international investment projects, such as the Myitsone Dam and Lat Padang mining project. How will the British Embassy ensure that British businesses act responsibly?
Well, I think in general, British and international businesses are exposed to their home markets. You know, there are people who campaign in the UK about the behaviour of these companies that are based in the UK. So there's a certain reputational risk to them, which ensures that they have a different standard of behaviour in general to some of the other companies you've been mentioning. But also, we have set up this resource, the Myanmar Centre for Responsible Business, which has a great deal of experience of how the challenges of working here, and which will be able to advise these companies on how to navigate around these issues in this country.
China has been investing in Burma for years, and Japan is now moving in as well, and Thailand has lots of business interest in the country. Have British businesses missed the bandwagon?
Well, I don't think it's a bandwagon. This country is going to grow over a period of 20 years, and I'm sure British businesses will be contributing to that growth and contributing to job creation here. There are challenges, and I think Japanese, US, UK companies are all aware of those challenges, and they have to come in here and have a look and see whether they want to come in now. We have had investors. Unilever are here, Land Rover have just opened a dealership, and of course there are the big oil and gas companies bidding in the current tender round for the offshore oil and gas.
Could you be a bit more maybe specific, give a few more examples of which sectors and which companies are looking to move in?
Well, oil and gas is obviously a big area of UK expertise, and if large gas reserves are discovered offshore, that's going to be transformative for this country. And I think it will be good if companies like Shell, like British Gas, who have very, very high standards of international conduct, are able to be the people who get those resources out and contribute to the economy. Another area perhaps I should highlight is education. There's a tremendous historic educational link between the UK and Burma. People always say that they want to learn British English, they want to go to British universities. We still have a very high reputation here, and I think there's a lot we can do in that sector as well to provide education, though that's at the very early stages at the moment. And then obviously manufacturing in due course. There are garment manufacturers who want to come in here. Unilever is here already, as I mentioned.
Burma has been ranked one of the worst places to do business in the world. It's up there with North Korea and Somalia. Given that you're a facilitator of British businesses, how do you deal with this reputation and these conditions? And is it putting off British businesses?
Well, it's a challenging place to do business, and we're frank about that. But I think the challenges can be addressed, and I think those challenges do exist in other countries in this region. I'm certain it isn't as bad a place to do business as North Korea or Somalia, for example. There are challenges here. There are challenges to do with land prices. There are challenges to do with the supply of electricity, which is very irregular, as you know. And there are challenges to do with people's skills and whether there's a skilled workforce. And then there's the overall political challenge of what's going to happen in the future. But those are the kind of challenges which exist in many developing countries. So I don't think businesses should be scared off. They should come and have a look, and they should decide on the basis of a hard-headed look whether they want to come in.
Ambassador, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Cheers, Utimbade.